call this customer service and explain my old computer died, I'm trying to reinstall everything on a new computer. And if you have not done this like 15 times in the past month or so, they would usually just kind of give you the key to reactivate the product anyway, because bad things do happen to computers, right? But it's a big hassle because you have to reapply all the patches, all the Surface packs. It will take you easily a day just to get the computer back to where it was. So the alternative sometimes is to clone the hard drive. Okay, cloning the hard drive is backing up everything. It's backing up the user folder, it's backing up the operating system, it's backing up the applications, everything in one single shot. Now, if your computer breaks down, the clone is still going to be a big hassle to even have the clone, because when you put a cloned hard drive into a new computer, it's not going to run. Okay, the operating system on the cloned hard drive will recognize, hey, this is not the computer that I was running on before, and therefore it will just give you a warning and say something, and it will probably give you a warning and say, I will stop working in a few days or whatever, something like that. It will give you some restrictions as to what you can do. But if assuming it is not your computer that is broken, it's just the hard drive that is broken, or the file system is corrupted, and you just want to restore the content from a week ago, a clone is a plug-in replacement. Okay, what do I mean by that? Let's say I made a clone of my hard drive last week. Okay, last Tuesday, 1 week from today, a week ago. And today, when I started my computer, my hard drive was acting up. Okay, I could not get it started at all. I go to Fry's, I buy a hard drive, a new hard drive that is about the same size as my current hard drive. I don't even have to do that, because my cloned hard drive from 1 week ago, I just have to open up the case of my computer, unscrew, unplug the hard drive that has gone bad, plug in the clone hard drive, start up the system. Yes, I would lose a few files over 1 week's period, but other than that, everything else is there. Okay, the operating system is there, the applications are there, the user data will be there. Just 1 week, I lost 1 week's worth of work. Okay, now that is nice because because if you have both drives in a system, if you have a spare hard drive on the computer, you can just do the switch from the BIOS. You can say, hey, BIOS, instead of booting from this hard drive, boot from this other hard drive instead. So in that case, you don't even have to do a single thing physically to switch to the cloned hard drive, and you wouldn't lose any time, because you have to restore to the cloned version. Yep.
If you backed it up on an external drive, did you make it boot from that?
It depends on the operating system in that case. Windows does not like to get started on an external hard drive. Now with eSATA, it's a different story, because with eSATA, I do not think the operating system can tell whether it's internal or external. But with USB, Windows for sure will not start. It will get to the bootloader, and then the bootloader will detect that it is on an external hard drive, and it will probably either give you a message or just stops completely at that point. With Linux, it's not a problem. You can easily tell that I'm starting from a SD card, and it still works just fine. Okay, that's a good question. So now the next question is, but how do I clone my hard drive? If I want to make sure that I don't have any downtime because of bad hard drives and whatnot, how do I clone my hard drive, and how involved is the process? That's the question. Does anyone in this class, regularly clone the hard drive as a backup mechanism? Nobody. All right, so you guys, should at least look into it. I'm not saying this is right for everybody. Okay, there are two products that you can use. I will introduce the open source product first. The open source product is called CloneZilla, okay, because we just like the word Zilla. Okay, we just say blah 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 Zilla. Okay, and CloneZilla is basically a open source equivalent. Not exactly equivalent, but it does many of the things that Norton Ghost can do. Okay, so if you're just starting out, you don't want to spend too much money, you're just experimenting, I would try CloneZilla first. If CloneZilla cannot do what you want to do, then you can consider buying the product, Norton Ghost. So if you read the text here, you're probably familiar with the proprietary commercial package called Norton Ghost. It's basically ghosting is cloning. Okay, ghosting means you're making an exact copy of a hard drive. So in case the main hard drive dies, you can just do a hardware swap with the cloned hard drive, and everything will be back. The operating system, the applications, all the user data. It is as if nothing happened. Okay. Now, the CloneZilla is also useful for many other purposes. This part here is kind of interesting. It takes a lot of time to massively clone systems to many computers. Okay, but we are not. I'm not assuming that you guys have to do that. This is typically someone's job at a lab. Okay, because all the machines in the lab, they're all clones of one single copy. But let's just say that we are not doing that. We're just doing a backup. So in that case, CloneZilla will also work on a single computer. What you need to do is to hook up an external hard drive that has enough capacity to store the image of the entire hard drive. Okay, what does that mean? That means if you have a 500 gig hard drive on a laptop computer, such as that one, okay, or 160 gig, 250 gig, whatever, you don't exactly need a 250 gig backup hard drive. Okay. Because this software can store just the portion of the hard drive that is in use. So of the 250 gig hard drive, if you're only using, say, 100 gig out of it, and let's say that most of it is compressible, you may be able to get away with an 80 gig hard drive, just barely. Okay? Which is nice because this means your backup hard drive does not have to be larger than, in terms of capacity, than the drive that you're backing up. The downside of that is the backup file is not instantly usable. In other words, your backup file you cannot just put your backup drive into the computer system and expect it to work right away. In that case, you will have to buy a new hard drive, 250 gig. Then you have to go through the process to reinstall or to restore the image on the new hard drive. Then you can put a new hard drive into the computer. Then your computer will be able to work again. So the downside is it takes one more step in order to restore the image on a new hard drive. But the plus side is now you can buy a 2 terabyte hard drive and use the same external hard drive to back up different computers in your house. Okay, so from that perspective, it is more cost effective because you can use one single 2 terabyte hard drive to easily back up 3 or 4 computers, and you don't have to buy a spare drive until one of the hard drives in one of these computers actually breaks. Okay, the alternative is to have a similar drive that is that's just an exact clone. Then you can just plug it in and it will work. Yes.
I had a bunch of stuff on an external drive backed up, and then I had to reformat the laptop it was from. And then the external got corrupted.
Ooh.
And so I was wondering if you know any good ways to salvage anything from it, because it's not reading the external anymore. Like I can't get it to be recognized at all, so all of my backed up data is just trapped on it.
Okay.
There's actually a program you can get that'll read like that information that's with like a hard drive that's gone bad. And there actually is a program that'll pull information still off.
Well, that depends on the nature of the problem. I can tell you that I have lots of experiences like that. When a hard drive, especially an external hard drive, that is no longer accessible, sometimes, okay, I'm just saying sometimes, it can be as simple as the cable itself is broken. It sounds silly, okay, but it actually happened to me. The Moodle server has an external hard drive to back up the content. And one day, it stopped working. I was panicking. I was going like, this is not working. How am I supposed to, store a off, server backup, copy? So I took it back to the shop, where I bought it, and they did some tests and they gave it back to me and say, oh, here's a new USB cable. It was just a cable.
Well, it has FireWire out as well, and I've tried both that and the USB out.
Okay, and they're both not working. It can be the chipset that is responsible to convert from SATA to USB or FireWire. So if you have a different enclosure, you can try to take the drive out of the broken, quote-unquote, broken enclosure,
And just
put it into a good enclosure, and see if it works. It may not be the drive itself. I'm hoping it's not the drive itself, because the enclosure, the chipset on the enclosure can also die. And that happened to me a few times too, and most of the time it dies because of heat and related problems. So your hard drive may still be okay. It's just that of the entire chain to go from the hard drive content to your computer, there are so many links along that chain. Yep. Any link on that chain is broken. It is broken. So I would switch to another enclosure. These days enclosures are not too expensive. So if you can find a spare one, try it out and see if it works. I also have the nice experience of finding out the problem of one of my failed external hard drive was bad solder joints. Because I was playing with it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. I wiggle it and it works. Wiggle it some more, it does not work. Wiggle it again, works again. Okay, well that's a typical symptom of a physical connection problem. So I opened up the case and use my loop and whatnot to to really look at the solder joint of the micro USB connector, and sure enough, it was loose. It was just not soldered correctly. Okay, and since I have lots and lots of soldering equipment at home, I just got to pull out my soldering iron, get my solder out, and the drive worked after that. So it could be like that too, but in your case it's not, because you tried both the FireWire and also the USB. So you have to look from the chipset and down from that link. Okay. So CloneZilla is one that you can consider. When you use CloneZilla, you have to be very careful of which drive you're backing up and which drive is storing the backup. Okay, because if you reverse the direction, then you would have destroyed the one that you're supposed to be backing up. Okay, do you guys understand what I'm talking about? And that's why sometimes it really helps to have the backup drive to be like 2 terabyte and the drive that you're backing up to be like 250 gigabytes, because they will show you the capacity of the drives. Okay, as well as the name, the IDs of the drive. But to you, the IDs, means nothing. I mean, especially if both are made by Seagate, then they will both be ST blah blah blah. There's no way you can tell which one is which one. But if the capacity is different, like one is 2 terabyte and one is 250 gigabytes, you can tell instantly, okay, which one is supposed to be the source and which one is supposed to be the destination. Okay. Are there any questions about CloneZilla or the process of backing up a drive? No questions. Okay. And of course, if you guys are, if that does not do what you wanted to do, you can always look into the commercial product called Norton Ghost. Norton Ghost is not exactly inexpensive. You have to go to Fry's and check out the prices. The professional version is $70. It can do a lot of the stuff that CloneZilla can. Does anyone know whether you can get this to work without having to reboot the system? Because my impression is if you're ghosting or cloning a hard drive, you always have to shut down the operating system and reboot it into the cloning mode. Can anyone confirm whether you can do it without having to restart?
Paragon might have drive imaging software that can do it. I'm not sure.
That's really hard to do because any file that is open at the time of the cloning, the content of the file is partially on the disk and partially is in memory. So it's really hard for a program to figure out what to store on the hard drive when you have applications open and certain files in the file system actually being in use. So I don't know about that. There's one more company. What's the name of that company?
Symantec? Symantec?
No, that's Symantec already. Symantec bought Norton. Acronis. Acronis makes a software to do it too. So Acronis. Yep, there you go. So these are all companies making reputable cloning and backup software, and you can look into these to figure out whether something from